The Fatwa against terrorism. A top Muslim scholar releases an edict denouncing terrorists and suicide bombers. Observers say this is the strongest criticism ever delivered by an Islamic leader. And joining us from London is our own Anne McMillan with more on the document that dismantles Al-Qaeda's beliefs. And we've heard this from imams before, but who is the man releasing this controversial document?
Anne-Marie, Muhammad Tahir ul-Qadri is a respected Muslim scholar who's written 350 books about Islam. He heads a grassroots religious organization based in Pakistan called Minhaj-ul-Qur'an and has a very large following there. His support in the UK, where he's in the process of making this speech right now, has really taken off in the past couple of years, and his group now has 10 mosques in British cities. He launched his fatwa denouncing terrorism in London today because he says he's concerned about the radicalization of British Muslims. The fatwa is contained in a 600-page judgment made up of a long list of theological arguments against violence, and they're drawn from classical teachings acceptable to all sects of Islam. It says that Islam forbids the massacre of innocent citizens, and it denounces terrorists and suicide bombers as unbelievers. At today's launch, he said that, and I quote, "Whatever these terrorists are doing, it is not martyrdom. All these activities are taking them to hellfire." Those are his words. His fatwa also condemns Al-Qaeda, which he describes as an old evil with a new name.
And members, obviously, of Al-Qaeda tend to be on the more extreme side of the Islam religion. So will this document make any kind of a difference?
Well, that's a very good question, because Islamic scholars have condemned terrorism in the past, but...
A word to the wise. Fatwa. It's an Arabic word for a legal opinion or order made by an Islamic religious leader.
A Muslim scholar in London is issuing a fatwa against terrorism. Some Islamic leaders have used the teachings of the Quran, Islam's holy book, to justify terrorism and suicide bombings. But this cleric we're telling you about today says that idea is totally false. Muhammad Tahir ul-Qadri explained this fatwa earlier this week. He studied the religious writings and says that violence is never justified by the Quran. He also criticized the idea that anyone who carries out a terrorist act would be promised an afterlife of paradise. Some officials have come out in support of ul-Qadri's fatwa. They say it might not stop suicide bombers, but it could encourage younger Muslims to reconsider joining extremist groups. Some of those groups use the Quran to try to recruit young members to commit violence. But ul-Qadri says the holy book is very clear on that point.
Terrorism is terrorism. Violence is violence. It has no place in Islamic teachings. And no justification can be provided to it on the basis of any kind of excuses.
Back in the U.S., a lot of cities are looking.
A fatwa on terrorism. A prominent Islamic scholar has issued a religious edict declaring that suicide bombers are unbelievers rather than martyrs.
Board of Governors.
Dr.Muhammad Tahir ul-Qadri is an advisor to the British government on ways of combating the radicalization of young Muslims.
I would say total condemnation of every act of terrorism, in every form and every manifestation of radicalism and terrorism, which is being committed or which has been committed for the last 1 or 2 decades wrongly in the name of Islam.
There have been similar fatwas in the past, but analysts say ul-Qadri's goes further by denouncing extremists as unbelievers. While it may hold no sway with hardliners, his influence is such that it may well dissuade younger, more impressionable Muslims from acts of terror.
This is the comprehensive condemnation of terrorism and suicide bombing, based on the original evidences of Quran and the Sunnah of Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and the classical authorities of Islam, which are irrefutable by any scholar or any person belonging to any sect.
One of the world's leading Muslim scholars has issued a fatwa, or an edict, condemning terrorists as the enemies of Islam. Dr. Muhammad Tahir ul-Qadri, who is the leader of the worldwide religious and educational organization Minhaj-ul-Qur'an, hopes particularly to turn young Muslim men away from the path of radicalism and extremism. And we're delighted that he's here with us now. Dr. Qadri, welcome. Why did you choose this time to announce the fatwa?
The basic reason of choosing this time is, you know, that this wave of terrorism has become very strong in Pakistan and certain other areas and other parts of the world, and they have started slaughtering the people, taking the dead bodies out of the graves and hanging on the trees and bombing everywhere. And I found that some scholars and ulema of the Muslim world, instead of condemning this act of terrorism, an act of brutality, absolutely, I found them silent and speaking in some of them in double speak.
Yes.
So this disturbed me. So I thought this is a time that I should issue a fatwa, and jurisprudential Islamic ruling, judgment, which should be very comprehensive, which should include all important basic evidences and arguments of Quran and traditions of Holy Prophet and classical authorities, which should address all major issues or minor issues which disturb the youth on which they have been brainwashed, so that the Muslim Ummah and generation and the whole world should be able to know what is the actual position of Islam on terrorism. Yes.
And I see, absolutely. And it is, as you say, a very full argument. 600 pages altogether.
Yeah, more than 600 pages. 604 pages on this argument.
On this argument. And your target here particularly is the young Muslims who may be tempted by radicalism and violence.
Yeah, definitely. Because these are young Muslims, or because of their age, they are being radicalized and they are being brainwashed, and they become extremists. Then because of a specific ideology, then they become radicals, and then they are picked up for suicide bombings. And this was the basic phenomena, a gradual phenomena. I wanted that they should be stopped. Not only the brainwashed suicide bombers, but thousands of those youth who are on the road. They have not still become suicide bombers, but they are potentials to become. They have. And they are being brainwashed. They are giving wrong interpretations of Islam. And they are being misguided by the wrong teachings. So this is the target of the whole younger generation particularly, and the whole Muslim community in general.
And in fact, the people that you hope most to change the minds of is the young.
Is the young.
Because they are growing and they are learning and so on. Not so much the older radicals.
Older radicals will also get benefit out of that, but main target is the young generation. Older too, because this explains the concepts of Islam. This explains what jihad is. This fatwa explains what is the position of Quran and Sunnah on act of terrorism. What does Islam say on rights of non-Muslims? What does Islam say on public massacre? What does Islam say on mass killings of non-combatants? What does Islam say on suicide bombing? So all these concepts which I have clarified, which the older people were also confused by wrong interpretations, so they will also get benefit out of that. So if they are also corrected, they won't be able to support them. And if the younger generation are corrected, they won't be able to become suicide bombers.
And what have you felt about the reaction so far? Have you been encouraged by the reaction, or has there been a lot of opposition? I mean, has it had the reaction so far that you were hoping for?
Up till today, the reaction and response which I have seen all over the world, it has encouraged me.
Good.
Absolutely, it has encouraged me. And it is beyond my expectations. And I am very happy that a very positive response is coming up from the Muslim Ummah and particularly from the whole of Western world. It looks that everybody is assessing and observing this fatwa as if it is going to bring the peaceful atmosphere of humanity back. And we are in fact taking Islam back from the terrorists and we want to unite the Muslim world and Western world again as a peaceful world which is based on love and tolerance and mutual understanding and peaceful atmosphere of coexistence. Everybody is encouraged.
You're going to continue with this message, spreading the message of your fatwa to everybody.
Yes.
Not just in Pakistan, where you're based, your organization is based, isn't it, in Pakistan, but around the world.
No, my organization is always, its headquarters although are in Pakistan, but its branches are in 90 countries all over the world. So, but I'm going to keep it moving. This is a movement now of de-radicalization. This is a movement of taking Islam back from Al-Qaeda and from the terrorist people. This is a movement of spreading the message of peace, message of love, message of tranquility, message of mutual understanding, message of peaceful togetherness and coexistence. This is a great message, this is the purpose of my life, I think. I have to continue it, and I want thousands of other scholars and voices, they should join me, so that from everywhere we may be able to remove the hatreds and biases.
Well, thank you very much for being with us, and we really appreciate you being with us and the power with which you deliver your message. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Dr. Qadri. Thank you.
Thank you, too.
And there, I'm afraid, we have to leave it for this week. Do join us again in 7 days' time for another edition of Tafsir over the World.